Welcome back to another Wednesday on the ThePirateRagnar MotoVlog channel. My name is Alistair, and let's get right into it. Now I know the last couple of videos have touched on the Vapor Blaster, and I am going to give everybody an update on that. I really wanted this Wednesday's video to be that completely built and in action, and although we have all the parts now, I haven't had the time to really finesse everything and make it work properly. So that will be next Wednesday, guaranteed. Even if it's a failure, we will see it. Though I will give you guys a little bit of an update today. What I'd like to do today is Moles needs an oil change. It's not that super exciting for everybody, but everyone needs to be doing their oil changes pretty regularly, so we'll get that done real quick. And then I had a request from a viewer to kind of go over some of the modifications that I've made to Moles. How did I modify the bike, even in those little ways that made it just more conducive to the kind of trips and the way that I use that beast. So we'll go over some of those details. And she kind of needs a wash, and I think it'll look good. So yeah, this video is going to be a whole lot about Moles. And then next week, we'll get back to the Vapor Blaster. But before we go too far from it, let me just give you guys an update. So right now the Vapor Blaster is in good order. It's just not completely assembled. We've also had to try and figure out kind of the best way to organize everything in the yard, because it's not a giant yard, and the grass part needs to be for Chelsea's gardens and the fur things, the dog and the cat, and so all my stuff is relegated to this corner, which is fine. It's more space than I used to have. But to get into use the Vapor Blaster, we're always going to have to move whatever project bikes that we currently have, so it's just something I have to deal with. But let's move these real quick, and then I can show you guys what the setup is right now and what I'm waiting on to perfect, and we'll go from there. So far we do have both of the holes that we'd made by disassembling other bits of the old sandblaster. We do have those filled. They do need to be sealed, so some caulking needs to be put in around those areas. I need to finish the caulking in a couple of locations. So that's really the only outstanding thing. We have our air line that's going to come in here from the compressor, and I just have to get one more hose so that I can attach this line to this. So it's I'm either going to cut a little bit more of this off to save a little bit more money rather than buy another 10 feet of hose, or I'll go and buy some more hose just so I have some extra. And then we'll get this hooked up. Water line and the air line coming to it. All of the fittings are here for reattaching our gloves. And then the only thing that's actually outstanding above that is glass piece back in, though I do want to work on trying to polish this up a little bit, get it a little bit cleaner before I do that, because it's seen some better days, but I'm pretty sure that will buff out and become nice and clear again if I put a little bit of elbow grease into it. So that's that. Our water pump is down here. There's no water in here right now. I've drained the water out of my original tub. Those style Rubbermaid containers are just not strong enough. They don't have the support that they need on the side, so once they're full of water they just bow out, and the volume capacity was a little bit lower than I would have liked, so that's why we're in this container here now. And that's pretty much it. I haven't shown in another video yet because all of the footage of the work I've done on this will go into a different video. The only other addition we have is a proper conduit light in here, so that should maintain its waterproof seal, and we can put in a really nice powerful light in there so we don't have a problem seeing stuff. And the goal here would be that this, again, although not the clearest of plastics, and if I can get my hands on some really clean Pyrex or something like that, then I will replace it, but I'll be able to try and film through there if leaving a camera actually inside the container in some way is just not conducive to filming, which I assume that would be the case, but we'll try it out anyway. Alright, so that's the update on the Vapor Blaster. Stay tuned next week, I promise. we will actually have it up and running, and we'll see how it does on a couple of parts, as well as really starting to pull all of the 750 engine parts and get them cleaned up with the pressure washer and some degreaser and all that stuff. All right. The only real note here would be, don't wash your bike when it's hot. That's it. I'm not good enough at cleaning anything to give any other suggestions. But if it's hot when you start, that's how you ruin crankcases. Get those kind of weird stains and things on it that just don't come off no matter how much you scrub afterwards. So let your engine cool down or wash it when it's cold. Yeah. Well, now that she's all clean, well, as clean as I'm gonna make her, we can warm her up, because we need the engine to be nice and warm in order to do an oil change. Super simple. Here's a DIY tutorial. You just take this out of this, and you now have an oil tray. I find it pretty convenient, and I've never really liked paying for hardened plastic oil pans because I just lose them, or they get stepped on, or something falls on them and they crack anyway, about as fast as one of these usually lasts me. So, but I'm a klutz, so, you know. It was just about here, in the editing room, that I realized I'd made another classic Alistair blunder. Wrong microphone setup. The rest of the footage from that rather windy day sounds something like this. So the engine's not been taken apart. There's always a magnet to do these things. They're not cheap to come by. I won't subject you all to that, so we'll just walk through it from here. The general process for changing an oil filter on a motorcycle is pretty universal. The location of the filter and the drain plug is not, however. Lucky for me, on the 450 they are very close and the filter faces down. I'm sure some people will notice the bike is on its center stand. When draining, it's usually advised to use the kickstand, as the drain plug is typically positioned to drain in that direction. I am confident with the 450s that because of the position of the filter, it makes very little difference. Once warmed up, locate the drain plug, crack it, and position your oil train to minimize a mess. Now, again, I've never managed to not make a mess, but planning ahead does help. A quick note on oil capacity. Be sure to check your manual. Often engines will have a stamped oil capacity. In the case of the 450, it's 3.5 liters. However, the engine holds a substantial amount of oil in the top end and coating the inside if it was run recently. So the manuals account for how much oil is likely to stay inside. The service manual advises to fill 2.5 liters, and it's always perfect. When in doubt, check that service manual. Trust me. We can also thank me for the incredibly annoying and unproductive product placement here. Good job, bud. Be sure to use new oil on all the bits and pieces while assembling, and clean out any debris and dirt you see. These filters usually come with a new gasket, so always replace them when you can. Sometimes they don't. I've gotten away with 2 changes on a single gasket, but beyond that, they leak like a sieve. So when sourcing filters, always check if they list a gasket in the box. Ensure the mating surfaces are clean, and remember how dirty the bottom of your bike tends to be. When reattaching the filter housing, do your best to hold it still so you don't risk knocking off dirt somewhere else and ruining your seal. Tightened up, snug is good. Again, when in doubt, check the torque specs in your manual. It's now time to fill her up, run the engine for a few minutes, let it sit for a few more, and then check your work. Remember that while she's running, check the seals underneath for any leaks. And that's it. Short of cleaning up, it's easy. Takes maybe 20 minutes, and I'm good for another 3,000 to 4,000 kilometers of thrashing. And now for the mods list. There's a few things that go without saying usually, but I'll list them anyway. The general maintenance items. There are some things you'll know that you have to change or plan to change on a very long trip. But there are other things that, if checked before you go, shouldn't need replacement at all. Fingers crossed. Some of these are wheel bearings, steering bearings, and your clutch. I guarantee I'm forgetting some, but those are the big ones for me. Bearings are all about safety, and you don't want that to be a worry in your mind when you have lots of other things to contend with on the road. Another item to check before a trip is your various cables. Throttle cables, clutch, choke cables, the list goes on. I've had them break on the road, and you should plan for that, but routine checks will save you lots of grief. Another tip suggested by another channel, Motorcycle Adventures, link in the description, that I've used since I heard it. Run an extra cable along the older ones before your trip. Zip ties can hold them in place, and in the event that something breaks, you not only have the part already, but it's also already fed through the various parts of your bike to save you loads of time. Pro tip, folks. Speaking about safety, I did a few mods related to that. Mostly extra indicators and or lights, as well as wiring up some hazard indicators since they didn't deem it worthy to include those on the bike back in the 80s. Additional fog lights are usually equipped for my trips as well, plus I can't stress enough, high-vis bags and gear, well worth your investment. On the luggage front, after years of random MacGyvered solutions, I had a buddy weld up these saddlebag supports and never looked back. The last few mods to mention are huge for me. Updating the electronics to include some of the must-haves for today. USB charger for cameras and phones, as well as various other things I'd mentioned before. Something I learned the hard way on these old bikes. Be sure your USB charger has an inline fuse. Or, go with the cheaper one and learn the way I did. Because the tack cables on these bikes are hard to come by, and not particularly useful to me, you can feel this engine quite well, and short of diagnostic purposes, you don't really need a tack to know when you should shift and when you're thrashing her a bit too hard. Instead, I removed the original so I had some space for switches, some for fog lights, hazard indicators, underlighting, and the last one there is just a slight deterrent. The bike won't start without flicking that switch as well. It won't stop someone that really wants to make off with moles, but hopefully frustrate others enough to piss off. Finally, seating position. The 3 changes I've made for comfort were all quite easy. First, I have 2 seats, a daily seat and a trip seat. The trip seat has some extra foam and brings me up about 2 inches, and makes for much less strain on my knees on the long 14-hour days. The second is the handlebars. The stock mounts lean back on a CB450, so I flip them. It brings the handlebars up about 1 inch and forward about 3 inches, and it's perfect for me. I have a bad right arm, so the final mod is really with that in mind. By mod, I just mean I keep the throttle grip pressed nice and snug with the starter and emergency off assembly on the handlebars, so I have an effective cruise control. The fact is, I cannot keep my arm in that position for hours and hours, so I need an option of letting my right arm go momentarily, and this works for me. But I really don't suggest new riders to jump on the idea of having cruise control. Well, that's about all I have for you guys today. This video is already way longer than I expected. If you've made it this far, thank you so much. Don't forget to hit the like button if you're so inclined, and smash that subscribe button if you haven't already. Remember to ride safe and ride fun, and I will see you all on the next video.